Hi, this is Jan Guarino, and you're in Fearless Watercolors. And today we're going to be doing a scene that was in Tuscany outside our windows at this villa we stayed at. Well, I guess it's 3 years ago now. In Italy, it was just this mist hung on all of the landscape, and it was just beautiful with the trees popping up. Let me show you, and I want to help you with the recording. I mean, not the recording. I'm saying I want to help you with the drawing just a little bit because I did not have a contour for this. So this is what we're painting tonight. And I'll just show you, so much of this is just going to be painting. I just sort of indicated like where the sun was here coming up, right? It's going to be white. And the tree line coming this way, which is here, a little bit of a break. And then this sort of just looks like an island hanging out. But I really just drew the top part because the bottom part is really going to be handled as a mist. And then I just sort of indicated the trees a little bit on the bottom. I did not put the wall line in there with the chairs. I just thought it would be more beautiful without that. But there are these trees that are sort of here, like in this, so these things, I think it's just going to be stuff we're going to develop as we paint it, right? So it was really a big old nothing drawing. There really wasn't much to give you on this one. I would have been happy to give it to you, but it just didn't really have that much. So that was why you did not get a contour. And what we're going to be doing tonight is utilizing a natural sponge to wet the paper down. It'll be a lot easier to do that than to try to wet it with our brush. It'll be a little bit more even. It'll make it damper and not as wet as with a brush. So there's that beautiful like sky. It's very muted colors, but it does go from like a blue into like that golden color. What we don't want to have happen is the blue to touch the yellow and turn to green. We don't want that in the sky, right? So let's take our sponge and let's just start adding some moisture to our paper. And don't worry if it comes to your tree line or goes below your tree line or anything like that. Try to keep it wet and very a soft wetness, okay? And let's see, let's test the paper out by dropping in some color. And I did suggest that you have your Moon Glow or Shadow Violet sort of standing by to tone down some of the colors that we're going to be using. I'm going to start with this sort of very light blue color, but I do want to tone it down a little bit and maybe add a little bit of violet to it because it's really not blue. We know it's blue, but just toning it down a little bit. And my brush is not that wet. I'm just really adding color because my paper is damp. And so that's the way I want it to run. And so now the blue would run across the top part of the paper. You could see it's already going on pretty softly because the paper is damp. And that's sort of what we want. I see that reflection there. Let me see if I could sort of move that around a little bit. Well, at least you know my paper is pretty wet there. A little too light. I'm going to go a little bit darker. I'm tilting my paper a little bit just so that it flows down a little bit. So that bluish violet is sort of across the top. But it's very light and very subtle. Because we want to transition into more of a golden orange color. And so I'm going to use my Quin Gold Deep and start there and just have it sort of touch into a little bit of the blue. Again, I don't want that to turn on us and have it be green. That would not be what we would want. We just want that morning sun kind of glow coming. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep, you know what, I just want to erase my mark for my sun is a little bit too dark. And I don't want to see that on my painting. So I'm just going to erase it. I can. Yeah, my paper's too wet to do that, so I don't want to ruin the paper. It's a good idea to mark things that you want to have, you know, to have on your paper. But if you don't want it to, you know, show up, and certainly I don't want that mark to show up, so I'll erase it later, but I'll just kind of gently go around it now. So you might go from your Quin Gold to your Quin Gold Deep to your Quin Gold. So one is a little orangier and one is a little warmer. The Quin Gold Deep is a little bit, that's a little bit too much right there. That's too much. Keep it soft. It's a real subtle kind of feel going on here. Make sure that your other color, while it might have gotten a little too light, just check it, make sure there's enough color on it that holds up to the photo. So I'm just using a combination of a little violet and a little bit of my soft blue. I really don't want to see any brush marks here, so I'm going to keep it real soft. So use your brush to sort of get that color into the paper and a little bit real soft looking and real blendy. Go past your horizon line, just go right past it. And along the bottom is sort of a pink color. So I'm going to use a little pink just along the horizon right here. They're all those soft pastel colors. You know, in the morning sunrises, they are softer colors than usually our afternoon or evening sunsets. And I just dropped a little, I'm really sorry, I left that mark in there. I'm going to erase that later. You could add a little bit of water just to indicate that's where the sun is right there. And there's just this beautiful glow coming from it. And, you know, work this as deep or as soft as you want it to be. Okay. And just keep the pink right along the bottom part right there. And that's really our first step. Looks a little blotchier on the screen than it really is. It's really not that blotchy. It's just the way it's kind of drying. If you missed the center and it filled up with color, just take a tissue and just hit it in the center so that it just eliminates that area there. And that'll lift that color really nicely. That would be too small a brush to use. You need your bigger brush to sort of get you into these areas without too much of a fuss. Use your mat to control how much moisture is on your brush. Oh, did I mention have a spray bottle ready too? Yeah, have a spray bottle ready too if you don't have that already. That's sort of step one. It's drawing a little uneven. If I go in and fuss with it too much, it's going to affect what's happening there. So I don't really want to touch that. Just, I'm not going to go in and touch that. I'm taking my sponge and I'm just that area, that mist that's on that right side, just adding some water there. Okay, this is going to be the dark that we're going to add. Now, I see that as like an undersea, but I also see something else in it. So maybe you want to add a little bit of your moon glow or shadow violet just to deepen it a little bit. So I see it as an undersea, but it's really not green because it's so, muted from the morning sun. Okay, so now I'm just going to touch this and I'm going to let me go closer and show you what's happening. It's just all spreading out. That's not even dark enough. I need more. It's too green. You want it to be very muted. I think shadow violet or your moon glow would be a perfect combination for that. Now where that mist is, I'm going to use my spray bottle, which is too empty. That's not good. And I'm going to spray the bottom of it. And oh my goodness, I'm creating mist. Can you see what's happening there? How it's moving? That's mist, guys. Just by hitting that with my spray bottle. Now this got a little light, so I'm going to go in and add a little bit more color in here because this is where the contrast is going to be, is right in here. And just turn your paper, just swish it one way or the other to get the mist. Do you see what's happening? How it's just creating that mist as it's moving across the page? And just swirl that around until you're happy with the effect that you're getting on your paper. Really what I'm doing is I'm just going in and charging up with a little bit more color in the middle of the mountain area. And then you can also, if it's a little out of control, you can also take your sponge and just lightly swish it also. There's no right or wrong way. What it is what's happening on your paper that matters. So this is just one of those situations where you just need to control what's happening on your paper. And so you could use your sponge to help you give yourself a little bit of that misty feel. So now I'm doing the next one. This has got a little dry here. So I'm going to just do this little area right here, sort of suggesting some trees. You could take your brush and you could just, with water, you could just hit it, the bottom part, and let it melt right into that mist coming down. It's already creating that feeling that we're looking for, right? This got a little light. I'm going to go back in, keep an eye on it. I'm going to go back in and just give it a little bit more color in spots. This is a total way in which you keep a lack of control with your control. It's really what this is. And there are some colors in there. So if you wanted to gingerly add some colors to your mist, whether it be, I think I'm going to add I added a little yellow, but I think a little pink would go good too. Not too much because it's really so light. Keep traveling back to your other side that you did to make sure it's what you want it to be. I'm just using my rigger right now to give a little indication of some of the trees on the horizon there. If you add a little bit of water with your brush, it also will move aside the paint, and create a mist as well. So just keep an eye out for what's happening here and how you can use your tools, whether it's your brush, whether it's more color, whether it's your sponge, whatever it is, utilize everything you have to sort of help you through this. Because there's just, for each of us, we're working in a slightly different environment, a different moisture in the air, how much humidity is here. You know, there's so many different things that are happening differently for each of us, how much water we're using. Keep your bottom edges really soft. Okay, I'm going to go in and do this horizon on the left side. Now that one is closer. So the fact that I did this one a little softer because that's further in the background, right? This one's a little closer up. So I'm going to go in and this is dry now. So I'm able to go in and it won't melt into the background as like the way the other one did. Now, when you're going in here, keep your bottom part soft so that you don't end up with a hard edge. Still using the same two colors, my Undersea and my Shadow Violet. And I'm going to switch to my rigger to get me some of those trees. And there's some beautiful swirls kind of happening. Okay, I'm going to just tap this with a little bit of water just from my brush. Keep it real soft. Some really cool effects going on here. If you want to, you can take your sponge and just, go ahead and give it a little bit more water. Keep it soft or use your brush, whatever sort of makes it easier for you. And go right through those trees that are in front. Those will be done on top of this when it's dry. So this is one of those situations where working a little damp / wet is really what we need. See, when it's damp, it's automatically moving for me softly. These mists are sort of coming over the mountains and swirling around. It's just so magical. And that was the scene every morning. You can see why so much of this is really not a drawing at all. It's really about reacting to what's happening on your paper. You could do some lifting if you have to, or just drop in some water and it'll totally push the paint aside and create a mist for you also. Lots of different ways to get a reaction here, a different sort of feel for this. This is still pretty damp, so that's good. I'm just going to work my way down. Try not to let any part of as you're going towards the bottom, try not to have any of this dry. You don't want any of this to dry. You want it to be as continuous and as seamless as possible. If it starts to dry or your marks look too uneven, hit it with your spray bottle. Little lifting. There's that beautiful golden color that's right here. I'm going to add some of that. It's a little too much. Let me move that around. So those trees really pop out, right? Those dark trees will really pop out if you add a little bit of golden right there. We're in a stage of this where it's very, it moves around so perfectly, for us because it's so wet, damp, perfect. Not the way we normally work, by the way. Normally don't work this damp overall, but this was a perfect painting to do it with. That's just a little bit of that golden light hitting the landscape in the morning. Looking pretty misty. There's definitely a timing to this that you want to sort of get into that feeling of how the paint moves and dissipates and feathers off. I feel like this needs a little bit of color right in here. So I'm adding a little bit of violet over here because it looks like it's a little cooler from that cool part of the sky. Sensitize your eyes a little bit to see these different color changes. Looking pretty misty to me. These blossoms that I got here, I'll be able to eliminate those. And if you're not sure on how to eliminate a blossom, I'll show you. I'll demo that for you. Not hard to do. Just have to do it at the right time. Notice I keep going back to certain areas that might need a little bit more oomph. And I just kept everything really soft and feathered on the bottom with my sponge. I didn't really go down here. So the bottom quarter of the page is just really wet and not really painted yet. Because I keep wanting to time myself on this one mountain in the background, or actually all of them. There you go. And now there's another sort of glow right here, which I want to get. I think that's really beautiful. Right here where those trees, the close-up trees are right here. So I want to get that glow. Notice it's all right here aligned with my sun, which is right there. Don't want to miss out on this. Use the right size brush for the right job. If you have a big area to do, switch to your big brush. If you're pushing too much paint around, you don't want to be using your little brush. You need to switch to a bigger brush. So that's just more of the shadow violet and undersea. I'm not doing that fence, that wall there. It just seems distracting to me. But if you want to do it, go right ahead. Just giving up a little bit more of the deep trees right here. I'm going to add undersea, not undersea, shadow violet in this corner, just so that it goes deep. goes darker. Maybe a little moon glow just to give it a little violet. Real soft. Okay. Back to undersea with a little bit of my Shadow Violet with my rigger going in, and I'm going to do some of these trees now. I'll go closer for you. So don't do this if you didn't get your background done. This is after you've got that background done. When you're doing these cypress trees, even if you see them lined up, don't line them up. Stagger them, make some taller, some wider, some, just change it up. Do not make them all the same. So this is sort of damp over here. They are melting a little bit into the landscape, not too much. Test it. Test it before you do it to make sure it's just the right amount of wetness that you're looking for right there. Notice I'm not painting trees. I'm just sort of painting the suggestion of trees. Little air holes, little areas where the trees are little see-through. You could see through them. I keep going back into my for more color because there's so much moisture on the paper that I need to make sure I have more paint than water because there's already so much water on the paper. It's already so damp. So when I go in to get my paint, it's I have to go in more frequently because I need a lot of paint. And not a lot of water. And this is sort of melting on the bottom because that's very soft also. It's still pretty wet. So it's really timing the areas that are wet on your paper as best as you can. If it's not ready, work in another area. Don't work where I'm working, work where it makes sense for you on your painting, okay? I like this rigger because it gives me some sloppy marks. I like that. And if it's not melting on the bottom, take your brush and just your sponge and just add a little bit of moisture to it. I do love those trees that are in the front, so I definitely want to do those. But that's going to be when it's a little drier. There's a little wetter over here because I did this a little bit later, so it's melting it a little bit more. I think it's still okay. Even if you just indicate the tops of them and the bottoms melt, that will showcase that they're trees. So start at the top here and let it sort of come down. How fun is this? The only thing that's more fun than painting it is being there. Just doing a little lifting here. There's like that little spot right there that sort of catches the horizon right here. So I could just take my brush and just lift a little bit of the green away, and it just pops right there. And there's another one right here. Really beautiful little areas where the sun just hit the morning landscape. And then this is all going to go darker here. I really liked the moon glow down here. That really worked out well. I'm thinking the same thing here. Test your paper and see where it's at in terms of its own wetness. I heard a very interesting little comment about what you draw and what you paint. And it was draw what you need, paint what you see. I thought that was an interesting distinction, that you don't overdraw what you're drawing on your paper. Draw what you need, then paint what you see. And I thought that was really a very simple explanation as to what you paint versus what you draw. So in other words, let me put it to you another way. If you know you see it and you could paint it, you don't have to draw it. Let me say that again. If you see it in the photo and you know you could paint it, then you don't have to draw it. So that may give you a little bit of an inkling as to the next time you're doing your own drawing. Think about that. You don't have to draw what you know you could paint. Only draw it what you need. Don't give it anything more. Because that's when it just gets too tight, right? It just gets a little too tight. You're just drawing too much. And if you know that you could handle it and paint it, don't draw it. And that's why tonight's contour didn't get to you, because it wasn't, so much of this was about just painting it, not drawing it. So if that's an explanation as to why you didn't get a contour drawing, there it is. I knew I could paint it and I didn't need to draw it. So my contour drawing looked like a big, huh? which is, I guess, important for you to know too, that that's what I didn't really need more than that. And chances are you don't either. I'm just going back in and just adding a couple of bit more little areas that I think could be little soft, misty spots. Yeah, I went through those trees a little bit. I actually like that I went through those trees. I wasn't really expecting to like it, but I actually do. Whether I'll paint them over again, I don't know. But right now, I kind of like what happened. It feels like a little mist got right over into them. In a bit, I'll show you how to get rid of those lines there. And then what we'll do is we'll sort of evaluate the whole thing and finish up with the trees that are right in front here. My rigger does a better job. Use the right brush for the right job. Need to blend, use your bigger brush. The next thing I want to do while we're letting all this dry is those little trees in front, but this is too wet to do that with, so I'm going to hold off right now. And I'm going to, oh, I see one thing that isn't quite right. This got a little too hard here. So I'm just going to go in with my brush and just soften that edge a little bit. You have the option of doing that at any time. Yep. Good. Everything's pretty dry at this point. The paper has a little moisture to it. The top is dry, and I just wanted to show you a technique for removing these different watermarks, these blossoms that we get. So I wanted to show it to you only because you need some clean water to do this and a fairly dry brush, which is what I have here. And all I have to do is just gently go in where that blossom ends. It just means that the color dried up into a harder edge, and just soften that a little bit with a little clean water and just go in, and it does take it away. I generally don't mind them, and I don't really actually mind them being in this painting. It could just be a little bit of cloud cover, but I just wanted to demo that I can go in here and just manipulate the color a little bit to soften that blossom. And just let that dry. It doesn't really affect anything because overall it works actually. But I wanted to demonstrate a nice technique. Very often people are, with watercolors, they're very nervous about getting them. I generally welcome them because to me that's just a sign of watercolor. It's just one of the things watercolor does. So I kind of welcome them, but I just wanted to show that to you. Now, let me just show you in the photograph here, there are these trees that are in front here. They're a little hard to see, but they're sort of staggered. So I actually really want to paint those. And so what I might do is just sort of with a pencil, just indicate where the trunks may be. And I could tell by my pencil marks that this is still a little, my paper's a little damp still, but I could paint on it. And what you want to be sure that you do is you stagger these so that they don't look lined up too much. So, okay, so I sort of indicated where I wanted them to go. Paper's not entirely dry, which I don't really feel is a big problem. because of how we've been working this area, but I am going to take my rigger and I'm going to be using the same two colors that I've been using. That sort of mixture. What I've been doing is dipping my paintbrush first into my undersea, and then I go into my well of Shadow Violet. And I'm going to, I'll go closer for you guys on these. Use a little Morse code, meaning dots and dashes. Now this is going to look a little too fussy, the way that I'm doing this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with the spray bottle. Before it dries too much. Or maybe a dot spray. I may try my dot sprayer and see what that does first. Let's see. Dot sprayer. Yeah, that looks good. So now I'm going to play around with those little water droplets that I got. Yeah, that's good. The dot sprayer will just give you these unexpected little areas of dots, water areas. And so now I could just play around with this a little bit. If I hit it with a regular mister, it would just be a little too much. And now I'm going to have this kind of come down and just melt it a little bit to the, don't have it just hang out, have it melt into the landscape. Now let me back out and show you how nice that looks. All right, so I'm going to do a bunch of those. I sort of did indicate a little bit where I want them to go. And then with just a little bit of water, you want to melt it into, and then go a little horizontal with it. And because you're using more paint, it's going to definitely stand out from the rest of it, these other trees that we did before. Melt it down, melt it down. Make your marks calligraphic. Make them interesting. Don't make them predictable. People are going to know their trees. You do not have to spell it out for them. Melt the base of the trunk of the tree. If you want to hit the dot sprayer first and then add your color, it works both ways. Whether you put the marks down first. The trick is not to let them dry when you're before you add the dot sprayer. That's important. And even though you might think that you're not going to see it, go into these trees up here. They shouldn't sit below it. You got to go into those trees. Let me back out and show you where it's at. Even though you think you won't see it, you will see it because it's color on top of color. So go make sure you don't just keep them low. You want them to go high into the trees behind it. Up here, go right into here. And it's bringing back beautiful memories. That dot sprayer, when I first saw it used, I didn't like the way the instructor was using it, but I quickly adapted and saw really great a great uses for it. It almost does look like they're placed in a certain way that they do kind of have a take on an orchard of some type. I don't want to lose that little highlight that's there. Charging them up with a little extra color while they're still wet. So even though there is a feeling of them being in an orchard and they are sort of somewhat lined up, I'm still staggering them a little bit. I don't know what kind of trees they would be. But they start giving the overall, up here. They do give a feeling of that morning kind of. And I'm going to do one more thing with a little bit of a wash. I can kind of see the shadows that are being cast by the trees onto the foreground here. So I think that's important to have that. Maybe connect like some of them so they don't look all so separated. And I'm just going to do a little checklist to see if I got everything in it that I wanted. So the shadows would be straight down here, and then as they go away, they would be a little bit to the right. So the direction of the sun really matters. Oh, I want to see if I could lift this, actually, my pencil mark, now that this is dry. I shouldn't have drawn it so heavy because I knew I could have saved it easy enough. Draw what you need. Paint what you see. Maybe a little bit more down here. Maybe I'll add one more. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to take a little inventory here and see if I got what I wanted from the photo. So I definitely have that feeling here. Maybe I'll go in. I don't know. I kind of like where that kind of got lost a little bit there. That's kind of cool. I have these popping out over here a little bit. Maybe I could go a little heavier right here, a little bit more definitive. So as it gets closer to me, I'm just being a little bit more deliberate in my marks. Now, if you start doing that, just make sure you take your brush and just melt it into where it's softer. And I think here I need to have a little bit more definition because this is really in the foreground here. So I'm going to just do the tops of them and I'm going to melt them into the bottom part. And just when you're doing this, make sure you just avoid making a pattern. Same shapes, the same width, the same height. You want to vary your marks. Make sure your marks are varied. Now I'm going to take that and I'm just going to melt this with my brush into that shape that's already there. So I'm not disturbing it. I feel like I got morning mist going on here. And again, I just want to lift this out a little bit more. What I may do for there is just paint it a little bit more. I was careful not to affect my paper too much. Yeah. Okay. Well, of course, my big test is when I take my mat board and I say, am I done? And I just take the mat and say, okay, how did we do? And maybe I tighten it up a little bit here and there. Maybe I don't need as much on top. Maybe I don't need as much on the left. And I might just tighten up a little bit like right there. Maybe come down a little bit here. Take out what you don't like or what you don't need and leave the rest. Definitely have a misty morning going on here. Yeah. Okay, I think that is a wrap. So that's tonight's class. A lot of great lessons. We're using our paper a little differently. We're putting our colors on a little differently. We're working much softer and very soft dampness, which is not traditionally how we work, because that's a little, not so sure what's going to happen, but it created a beautiful mist. So this is what we ended up with. I think it has a good feel to it. Have to look at it fresh in the morning, of course. That always helps. Put it on the wall, stand back from it, and evaluate what it might need. So thank you for joining me. This is Jan Guarino, Fearless Watercolors, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.